Hello, this is Kathy Moore. I'm glad you joined me today. Today we're going to talk about how faith speaks. Faith says something. So when you have faith, it says something. Something's going to come out of your mouth. That's how you became a follower of Jesus. And if you haven't done that yet, go to the description and I've got some instructions there for you. How to become a follower of Jesus. You have to believe something and you have to say something. That's how faith works. So we're going to start in 2 Corinthians 4:13 today, and it says this, and since we have the same spirit of faith, well, the same spirit of faith is who? Well, of God, our Father. We have the same spirit of faith according to what is written, I believed, therefore I spoke. We also believe and therefore speak. Did you know that what you believe in your heart, really, really believe, it'll come out of your mouth, even if you don't mean it to? It works in the negative. If you believe that you're going to be in lack, if you believe that God's not going to take care of you, it's going to come out of your mouth and it's going to sound an awful lot like worry, which you're told not to do. So we need to get our beliefs so firmly established in our heart that we speak out of faith, not out of anxiety or fear. So let's go to Hebrews 10:23. This talks about it as well. Hebrews 10:23, let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. Well, that's what you need to believe. You need to believe that when God promises you something, he's faithful to do it. See, God doesn't make promises like people do. People make us promises all the time, and sometimes we can depend on them and sometimes we can't, right? It depends on the person. We all have people in our life like that, right? We know who we can depend on. There are people who mean what they say, and then there's people who make us promises and then they don't come through, and we quickly find out the difference. Well, you need to understand this about God, that when he promises us something, he is faithful to do what he said he's going to do. In fact, the Bible tells us that God can't lie. Like, not even, he doesn't lie. He's not even capable of lying. So that if we have his word on something, then we can establish a belief. We can put our hope in that. Remember, hope isn't wishing. Hope is a solid expectation. So you can have a solid expectation that what God promises you, he will do. He is faithful. When he gives us a promise, especially in his word, he writes them down for us. When he writes down his words for us and we meditate on them and we believe them, he's faithful. So then we need to hold fast to what? Our confession. What's confession? Our speech, what comes out of our mouth. We need to make sure that what's coming out of our mouth is what we really believe. Well, do you believe that God is faithful? You need to say that. Do you believe that God is going to take care of your needs? Remember, I did the video on don't worry. Go watch that video about not worrying because God's going to take care of you. He's going to meet your needs. Do you believe that? When you do, your mouth will say the same thing. So instead of speaking out of your mouth, oh, I don't know how we're going to make it. Oh, everything's so expensive. We need to confess or say, God's going to take care of us. Even though prices are going up, God's going to take care of me. Even though there's inflation, God's going to meet my needs. And then, remember, you can't try to figure out how God's going to do it. That's up to him. But when we have faith, when we have a true belief that God is faithful, it'll come out of our mouths. And we need to hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering, without changing our mind, without saying one day I believe God and the next day saying I don't think I'm going to make it. That's wavering. So we need to hold fast and say the promises of God, but you can't say them if you don't know them. So we need to get into our Bibles and we need to read God's promises, and then we need to be so firmly established in our hearts that God's faithful. He'll do what he promised. so that it comes out of our mouth continually. Now we're going to end up in Romans 4:17, and it's I want to get to the end of the verse, but I'll read the whole thing for you. It says, as it is written, I have made you a father of many nations. This is talking about Abraham. We'll have to do another video on Abraham. In the presence of him, God, who he believed. Here's where I want to go. God, who gives life to the dead and calls those things which do not exist as though they did. That's how faith works. God gives life to the dead, and God calls those things which do not exist as though they did. That's how God created the heavens and the earth. That's how he created our world. There was nothing on this planet. We should go to Genesis. There was nothing here, and God spoke it, and it came to be. That's the God we serve. And remember, we have the same spirit of faith. We have the ability to believe something in our hearts, speak it out of our mouths, and when we truly believe it, then we have the ability, like our God, to call those things which do not exist as though they did. So what do we need to call? We need to call peace in our lives. We need to call health to our bodies, those things that do not exist. And as we believe in our heart and speak them out of our mouth, the law of faith kicks in, and we will eventually see what we called forth. It isn't instantaneous. This isn't rubbing a magic genie out of a bottle and saying, I wish I had $1 million and poof, there it is. That's not the law of faith. Faith works by believing in your heart and speaking out of your mouth. We need to be like our God, who gives life to the dead and who calls those things which do not exist as though they did. He is faithful who is promised. We have the same spirit of faith. So our faith must come out of our mouths in order to be effective. So I hope this helped you today. This is something that we got to continually renew our minds to and study. So the scriptures are in the description box for you. Go study them out and be blessed.